Hello everybody. Today I wanted to make a video that's slightly different than the type of video I normally want to make. This is going to be an unscripted video, just kind of raw, kind of talking about some of my feelings about the MMO genre as a whole. So we're going to do it in one take and hopefully very little to no cuts. So this is going to be an Oscar-nominated video for sure. So the topic I want to talk about today is just generally how bad the MMO industry has gotten. And I know this isn't by any means a new topic. People have been talking about this for a year, 2, 3 years, right? But I kind of wanted just to add my voice to the chorus of voices that have been speaking up about this for a while now, in the hopes that it will, as the movement kind of grows a little bit, developers will start to hear us and say, okay, there is room in the genre for these types of games people are asking for, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the problems that I personally think are plaguing the industry as a whole, and then maybe some reasonable solutions to those problems. All right. So this video is really prompted by my recent playthrough of Tarisland a little bit, and it's not completely out yet, right? They're time gating levels, they're time gating dungeons and raids, which is in itself a whole problem, right? Like just drip feeding content, that making you kind of rip through content so fast, or allowing you to rip through content so fast that they have to slow it down so you don't, right? Why not just make it slower to do those things? Why make it feel so fast to get into it, but then have to time gate it so people are still interested in your game for at least 5 or 6 days? So it leads into really one of the first problems I kind of have with the MMO space as a whole. And this isn't just a Tarisland video. I actually plan on doing a whole review of the game once I get into a little bit more. But this has kind of been prompted by that, and I reflect back and I'm thinking about other games that have done this as they've come out over the past few years, right? So that really leads to my first kind of problem I want to identify. We are being fed these games that get you hooked super fast. They get you to level either really quickly and get all your abilities, or they just give you all your abilities very early. And then you kind of lose this sense of slow power, or the slow character progression through the game. It usually ends up leading to a lot more shallow combat and gameplay than if you were to have drawn it out over the course of a longer period of time, right? You have to level 50 levels, and as you do that, you gain new abilities. I think that's really one of the first problems I've seen, or that I want to identify that I've been seeing lately. And I don't know how Throne and Liberty works, but I know that it has become kind of common in the industry as a whole. So I'm curious to see what TNL does with it later this year. I haven't really followed the Korean release at all. I've obviously heard some of the mixed reviews and why it's mixed. The second problem I want to address is the lack of kind of meaningful identity in a game. Most games you can change your name, or you can server transfer really, really easily, and usually at a dollar cost, which we'll go into the dollar cost on the next problem that I'm going to identify. But the problem with this specifically is that you no longer are in this MMO social space. And I want to just kind of stop really quick and just say, I know that these are obviously my personal opinions, and some people really love the state of the genre right now. Obviously, these games wouldn't be being made one after another like they are if there weren't people paying for them and giving money for them, right? So clearly, whether it's intentional that people are loving it or they just don't know that they're being manipulated to like it with dopamine hits, right? I don't know, but it is working clearly because these games are being made. Now, whether they're surviving and thriving, I don't know, but at least the developers are making enough to recoup their costs, I would have guessed. Otherwise, they wouldn't be making these games the way they are. But I do think like there is a growing subsect of players that wants to bring back, in particular, meaningful player identity in a game. In a social space, you want to create that persona you have in the world that you're in, whether that's through RP or not, or just being who you are in a group of friends, and or in the landscape of guilds on a server or the economy on a server, right? People look at that player and they say, I know exactly kind of what they're about based on their behavior in the past 3 months. They're a really good tank carry, right? or they're really skeezy with the auction house. I know to avoid them because it just fuels their skeezy auction house behavior. So that kind of player, like, I love that identity because it creates a geopolitical landscape, right? That shifts and it feels fun to be a part of. It's actually a really good escape from the real world where we have all that happening, but it's way more serious, right? So that's kind of the second problem I've been feeling, is just you get into a game and someone could transfer off or change their name and there's no tying them to who they are, or you just have LFGs to like pair people together and you never have to talk to anyone ever again outside of that. So there's not really any social systems that make you interact. Again, not everybody wants that. Some people want to play these MMOs solo. I don't really feel like, to me, that's an MMO. That's just a single player game that other people are in it. And you're not really like forced to interact with them at all. But again, I think there's space in the industry for all types of games, right? I don't think necessarily one game's going to completely pull the audience from another game if it's just not a game they want to play. Kind of leads into another problem I've been thinking of, and it kind of departs away from the interaction and the social aspect a bit, but it's this power progression fantasy is starting to be just really pared down and just feels boring. Almost every MMO I've played recently, the gear progression is simply, I've got a piece of gear with X, Y, and maybe Z tertiary stat on it. And the next piece of gear I'm going to get is going to have X, Y, and possibly Z tertiary stat on it. And it's just 2 stat points higher. And that's it. It's just a slight power gain. There's not a meaningful decision in build crafting or feeling like this new piece of gear will open up a new play style for you. I would love to see developers start to think about going back to this method of 2 different pieces that are equally powerful or strong in a meta, but they encourage different types of gameplay. Does that make sense? So to me, and I look back at, this is an extreme, and I wouldn't want to see this per se, but you look back in vanilla WoW, and you could get a blue item from a dungeon, and that might be best in slot for 2 raid tiers. I don't think that's great gear design, but I think it's fun to think about these things where different items on certain builds could be good rather than just a straight upgrade each raid tier, right? Or situationally good. I remember farming for the fishing reel in Zul Grub and WoW, and that was going to make it so I wouldn't miss my taunts, right? Taunts had 0 chance to miss during certain Drake fights in Blackwing Lair. That's cool. Like, that feels fun to have, and that just, I feel like, doesn't exist in MMOs anymore. There isn't this chase piece of gear you're getting for either situational use or just because it's really strong for a very long time. I would love to see developers start to bring back creative build crafting again, and not just, this is your BIS and this is what you're going to use, right? Finally, the fourth really big problem I've been seeing, and again, these are not new topics. This is just me adding my voice to the already growing dissent, right? But is just microtransactions in games, right? And you've seen these videos over and over again, but it's so bad, you guys. Like, playing, I'm going to specifically call it Tarisland here, and I'm not surprised by Tarisland. Don't get me wrong. I knew it was going to be what it is. It's a mobile PC crossover. It has some fun parts to it, and I will bring that up in my review video, but it's so overshadowed by just how bad some things are, right? Auto pathing and there's not auto questing, thank God, but there's auto assist where you click one button and it sets up a macro for your full rotation. It's just ridiculous. But going off of that is the microtransactions, right? They claimed initially to be not pay to win. They are 100% pay to win. You can buy a crystal in the shop, and then you can use that crystal to buy gold, which lets you buy things on the trade auction house thing, right? It's just a lot like Lost Ark, and I think you even look at the WoW token, right? It's just 100% you can spend money and get power with it, right? But beyond that, there's, rows and rows of tokens and currencies you get from different activities, and just this bloat of menus of seasons. And there's a season pass and battle pass, there's daily login rewards, there's daily achievements, there's rewards for spending money in the store every day, right? It's just so bloated with random click here to get something. You really did nothing for this, you didn't earn it, you just, you know, you played the game at the most basic level, but here's a currency for you, and it's one of 7 different currencies. It's absolutely wild, and it's become so unclear. They're like purposely obfuscating how it all works and intertwines just to confuse you. We spent, I think, an hour on stream just digging through the store to try to figure out how pay to win the game actually is, right? It's not as upfront as it used to be, where you can just spend money, get premium currency, spend premium currency, right? It's all tied together. This currency lets you buy this currency, which lets you buy that currency, but it's only used in these situations. It's gotten so bad. And then on top of that, like this has been also happening forever as well. But the mismatching sums, I hate this. I hate that you buy a pack of 1,000 premium currency, but the thing you need to buy is 800, right? Like, or 1,200 or 1,100, just offset slightly. But it never lines up. That's just one example, but they would all be that way. Like everything you buy doesn't match up with the amount of currency you can buy. And I know why they do that, because then you have leftovers, right? And then you are like, well, I've got 200 premium currency, I could just buy another one, 800, and then I can get this thing I want, right? But it's so predatory because it just manipulates people's minds, and we just don't even think about it, and we're already pot committed into the game, right? I don't have a problem with cosmetic microtransactions nearly as much. I wish they wouldn't even exist, but I get why they might be a slightly necessary evil. Okay, so those are my 4 big kind of problems I've been thinking about as I've been playing MMOs recently. Just shallow gameplay and combat for the sake of getting you in there faster and getting you hooked on the game. This lack of like player identity and agency in the world that you're in. You can just change your name, or you server transfer anytime and restart, and there's no consequence to how you interacted in that social space. Just incredibly boring power progression fantasy where you're just ticking another box to get slightly more stats just to be able to gate your way into the next dungeon tier, because you have to have a certain gear score, right? And then just microtransactions just going out of control, just hyper aggressive. So a couple, I've got my eye on a couple games, right? There's obviously I've bought into the Intrepid Ashes of Creation. I get people's hesitation. Star Citizen has left a lot feeling very jaded, right? And other MMOs that have been kickstarted, right? But I actually am a believer in Ashes of Creation. I'm very hopeful that it comes to fruition in the way that we hope it does. And Intrepid's founder, Stephen Shreve, actually had an amazing quote that kind of won me over 3 or 4 years ago. I'm actually going to cut it in here. So,
I'll tell you this. I know that there's a lot of skepticism out in the MMORPG community in a whole, not just about Ashes, but about any new development.
Yep.
And that's because we've been beaten time and time again with a stick, and we're like this hurt dog that is like, somebody comes up to you with a frickin' beef jerky, biscuit, and they're like, here, have this new MMO, and they beat the shit out of you again.
Okay, so there's the quote. Absolutely, like just that statement alone just kind of resonated with me, and I think a lot of other players at the time. So I'm hopeful about Fantasy Pixel Castle, right, and their Project Ghost coming out. I don't know. We don't know much about it at all, but I'm hoping it kind of rises above this kind of predatory scheme. So I've got a couple in mind that I'm hopeful for. Obviously, we've been jaded on things like Lost Ark and now Tarisland and many others, right? Even games that started out not super predatory ended up turning predatory after time. So what do you think, like, this is kind of where I've been going. What are some reasonable answers to these problems, right? Because I think, especially when it comes to microtransactions or just monetization, like developers need to make money. We live in a world where we, as the consumers, demand content to keep coming out, right? We either want it seasonally, or we want fun event-based content, or we want expansions or DLCs. The box cost of those is not nearly enough to sustain studio costs anymore. I don't believe, right? So I think, you know, there has to be a continuous amount of money. So I don't have a problem so much with cosmetic cash shops. It's kind of funny. I don't have a problem with subscription fees in games. I know that was a big barrier for a long time. A lot of people said, you know, I'll never pay a sub. Like, I paid for WoW forever, but I don't see any reason for a sub should ever exist again. And so a lot of games that had subs ended up either failing or going free to play and just then implementing a super robust cash shop, right? So I think a subscription-based model is actually good. You're paying to play, you're not paying to win. I don't also hate the premium pass idea where you pay and you get, you know, an aura of some sort. I know that that's pay to win. It's, to me, if you're going to play a game serious, if you're going to have a free-to-play game out there, then having that is probably worse than just straight up selling power items, because most people are willing just to pay a sub fee, and that ends up being whatever that premium aura is, right? So I think that, to me, that's a reasonable solution. Not my favorite. I think just a straight sub fee and then a cosmetic cat. Like, I think what Ashes of Creation is doing is probably in 2024 my, you know, preferred model. I think we just aren't in the realm of games cost a certain amount at box cost, and that's it, and then you play it, because we have such high expectations for live service games. Anyways, so I skipped ahead to problem number 3 with there, but let's talk about the other first 2 problems now. So fast took shallow gameplay and combat, right? So this getting you in there, but then also falling flat later. So what you'll often see with this is you either get access to all your abilities really early, or there just isn't really any meaningful interaction and fun, like, complexity to your combat, to the way you play your character. There can be fun mechanics, and this is actually something I found in Tarisland. I actually think, like, the boss encounters are kind of fun. They are slightly well designed. I was in a raid group. We wiped a couple times. People figured out the mechanics. Perfect. We got it. We cleared it. It was fun. But, you know, the overall interactions between your abilities don't really feel like they're pushing me to any sort of limit, right? But that's because you got all of them very early, like from level like 7 or 8. I think I had all of my abilities. Maybe it was 10. But I don't really know, you know, those types of games need to exist in the market, I think, because there is a crowd for them. There is a consumer base to play those types of games. But the problem is you get a bunch of older school MMO gamers like myself who are begging devs to give us a slower paced game, right? Give us something that feels like a rewarding grind, not just a grind for the sake of the grind, but as you hit different, tiers of leveling or different tiers of power, you unlock something new for your class, and that takes place over the course of months, right? Or even years if that game decides to draw it on that long. It's a different kind of dopamine hit. It's not the zoom around, get all your abilities, have everything be blink and rush and dash, and get right into a dungeon right away. Like, you have to find a group of people to go in. But those games just don't really exist at the moment. Like, nothing modern at all. Like, anything that exists in that capacity is old, right? Or a rehash of an old game. All these classics coming out, right? So I think I would beg developers, please give us that type of game where you feel like, yes, it took me 2 days of playtime to get to this point, but now I have this, whether it's a new ability, a new talent, some sort of a pinnacle talent, or maybe a really, a good piece of gear that I had to find group after group to go with and farm this dungeon or farm this material to get it crafted, and now I have it. Like, that's a completely different kind of dopamine hit, and that's one that I've been looking for, right? That I want that feeling of I spent time, I committed time into it. And that actually goes back to the microtransaction, the power progression, the microtransaction purchasing power, right? In most PvE games, people say, well, it doesn't affect how I play the game, so it doesn't matter. But to me, it actually does affect me. And I don't know how many of you guys are like this, but sure, yeah, if it's not a PvP issue and it's, they're not killing me or they're not doing better than me in something, I get the argument, like, it doesn't affect me, so I don't really care that it exists. I do actually care that it exists. It makes my time feel less meaningful, right? Like, and that's a thing for me, right? I acknowledge that, and I'm okay with that. And I think games can be designed for that. It's not something everybody feels, but I want a game that someone can't just spend $50 and do the same thing I spent the past month doing, right? I don't think it's too real life, right? I deal with that in reality too much. I want a game environment where people can't do that. So that progression fantasy, that kind of slow roll where everybody's on the same pace despite how much they're spending in real life. The meaningful identity, I mean, this is just something that, some games are gonna have server transfers and some aren't. I want a game where that doesn't exist. You can't just pay to get off a server. You can't just pay to change your name, and start over in the community's eyes, because then that takes all the social aspect out of MMO and you just can be someone new every month, right? And then the boring power progression fantasy. I mean, I talked about this a little bit when I identified the problem. I would love a game, again, that has, maybe two items that are equal in power, but have different, tertiary affixes to them or something like that, where it makes, I want to use one in one situation and another in a different situation. Or, getting one piece of chase, really chase. It took me a month or 2 months to get this piece of gear. It completely changes the way I play the game, right? It turns it around and it makes me do a whole new build, right? That kind of thing would be fun. I know that's not necessarily realistic, but just chasing something along that thought process, we just don't get that in games anymore. It's just, these are your stats. This is the piece of gear you want. Go get it. End of power progression fantasy, right? So anyways, those are kind of the things I've been thinking about lately, and I just wanted to put them in a video. And again, if nobody sees this, but maybe one developer sees it and they're like, hey, yeah, okay, so this is a growing concern, then that's all this video was meant to accomplish. So, but if you did watch and you did like it, please give a like, subscribe, all the stuff. It really helps me. I'm just starting to make videos. It helps me grow as well. But I would like to know what you guys think about this down below, right in the comments. Let me know if you are happy with the state of the MMO industry. Like some people are, I'm sure. Let me know if you're dissatisfied, what the problems there are, and what you'd like to be fixed. Maybe I didn't cover everything here. This is just kind of my short list of complaints, right? And then also let me know what you think about this format where it's just me rambling at a video to you guys. I enjoy doing it this way. I don't like reading off a script. So if you enjoyed it, let me know. And I'll make more like this in the future. I've got a couple other ideas kind of cooking up. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, spending your time with me. I'll catch you guys on the next video, and have a great day.